Ever wonder what really happens behind the scenes when making a movie?
Oh, yeah.
Today, we're taking a deep dive into the Malayalam film industry in India, and we're going way beyond the glitz and glamour you see on screen. We're going behind the curtain with a report commissioned by the Kerala government itself.
This is a fascinating look at an industry known for its unique stories and incredible talent.
Yeah?
But this report reveals a darker side.
Oh.
It all began in 2017 with a group of women in the industry who formed the Women in Cinema Collective, or the WCC.
The WCC.
Yeah. They were frustrated with how things worked and pushed for change.
So this report is a direct result of their efforts.
Exactly. And what's so compelling is that it's based on the real experiences of the people who work in this industry.
So we're hearing from the actors, the directors, even the hairstylists.
Everyone. Hairstylists, junior artists, you name it. The committee went to great lengths to get people to open up about what's going on.
I bet that wasn't easy.
Not at all. They were dealing with sensitive issues, and lots of folks were afraid to speak out.
I can see why. Retaliation is a real concern.
Exactly. So just scheduling interviews was a challenge, as many people in the industry are constantly on the go, working on a bunch of projects at once.
Yeah, definitely not your average 9 to 5.
Right. And finding a stenographer they could trust. That was a whole other hurdle.
Oh, wow. The report even mentions how tough that was.
It does. It really shows you how committed they were to protecting those identities.
Yeah.
And they didn't just rely on stories. They gathered tons of hard evidence, questionnaires, interviews, documents, even audio clips, video clips, WhatsApp messages, you name it.
They really did their homework. What struck me was how the report framed these issues as human rights violations.
Absolutely. And they started with a stark fact. Many women in this industry are denied basic human rights on set.
Basic rights? Like what?
Things most of us take for granted, like access to toilets and changing rooms.
Seriously? You're kidding.
Nope. It's all right there in the report. Women are forced to find secluded spots for bathroom breaks, even in remote locations.
That's unbelievable. Imagine filming in a forest and having to search for a place to go.
That's exactly what some women have to deal with, worrying about their safety and privacy on top of everything else.
That's just dehumanizing. Did the men in charge have any justification for this?
Some men said women had been adjusting for years, so it wasn't a big deal.
Adjusting? What does that even mean?
It's a way to downplay and normalize a serious problem.
It sounds more like an excuse to me.
You got it. And that mindset leads right into another disturbing issue: sexual harassment.
How bad is it?
The report is very clear. Sexual harassment is rampant in the industry. It even starts before women get their foot in the door.
What, like they have to deal with harassment just to get into the industry?
You got it. And then there's this pervasive idea of compromise and adjustment.
Like a euphemism for something else.
It's basically a code word for putting up with unwanted sexual advances. It's like saying, this is just how it is.
That's so messed up. It preys on women's desire to succeed, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's all tied to this huge power imbalance, which honestly isn't unique to this industry.
Yeah, it's everywhere. But is it really more pronounced in Malayalam cinema?
Well, the report highlights how those in power, and it's often men, exploit that perceived need to compromise. The fear of speaking out is immense.
Or what makes it almost impossible to come forward.
The report shares a story about an actress who went through a traumatic experience during a scene.
An intimate scene.
She was pressured to stay quiet and had no one to turn to.
So, reporting to the police isn't an option for many of these women.
Right. But the WCC advocated for an internal complaint cell.
An ICC, like an HR department for this kind of thing.
Exactly. But the report has some doubts about whether an ICC would really work.
Why not? What's the issue?
They found that a small group of men basically control the industry.
Operating behind the scenes.
Yep. And they use their power to shut down anyone who questions them.
So you're saying an ICC could be manipulated?
Absolutely. It could become a tool for silencing dissent instead of solving the problem.
That's pretty scary. Almost like a shadow organization.
And there's another thing they uncovered. A whole system of banning.
Banning.
It's how they blacklist people from working in the industry.
Really? Is it official?
No, completely informal. No paperwork, no official process, nothing.
So how do they do it?
Whispers, threats, backroom deals. It's all under the radar.
Wow. And it actually works.
The report has stories of how this system has hurt people, including members of the WCC who dared to speak up.
That's pretty chilling. It's like they can control your entire career.
Yeah. And it's not just actors, it extends to other areas too, like the hairstyling department.
The hairstylists?
Yep, a lot of them are women, and they face specific types of discrimination. It limits their opportunities.
How so? What kind of discrimination are we talking about?
The union representing hairstylists has these age limits and membership restrictions that really target women.
That's crazy. It's like they're trying to keep women out of the industry altogether.
Ugh.
And speaking of vulnerable groups, what about the junior artists?
You're right, they're often the most vulnerable, and this report doesn't shy away from their experiences.
What are some of the things they have to put up with?
We're talking about low wages, long hours, no food or water, dangerous working conditions, and constant pressure to stay quiet.
That's awful. Like they're stuck in a cycle of exploitation.
Exactly. They depend on these jobs, but have no power to challenge these terrible conditions.
It makes you wonder if change is even possible. Where do you even start to fix such deep-rooted problems?
It's definitely a challenge. But the report does offer some solutions.
Like what? What do they propose?
Well, they suggest a complete overhaul, starting with new legislation.
New laws, specifically for the film industry.
Yeah, laws designed to protect women's rights.
That's a pretty big ask. What would those laws look like?
One major proposal is an independent tribunal.
A tribunal? What for?
To investigate these cases, the harassment, discrimination, all that.
So separate from the industry itself.
Totally independent.
Yeah.
They'd have the power to actually do something.
Like what? What could they do?
Issue penalties, bans if necessary, even enforce contracts.
Wow. That's pretty powerful. But could something like that actually be implemented?
It'd be tough, for sure. The people in power now wouldn't give up control easily.
Yeah, you're probably right.
But the report argues that an independent body is the only way to really break free from the current system.
It's like they're calling for a revolution.
Kinda, yeah. They know just tweaking things won't cut it.
It's got to be a complete shift in power. Are there any other suggestions, maybe something a bit easier to implement?
Oh, they have a bunch.
Right.
One is mandatory written contracts for all workers.
Really? I thought that was already standard.
You'd think so, but a lot of people, especially junior artists, work without contracts.
So they have zero protection.
Pretty much. A contract would lay everything out. Wages, hours, safety protocols.
That makes sense. Gives them some legal recourse. What about this gender sensitivity training they mentioned? Can you really train an entire industry?
They suggest doing it online.
Online?
Yeah, make it accessible to everyone.
Like those mandatory safety trainings you see in other industries.
Exactly. It's about setting clear expectations.
No more compromise and adjustment.
Right. Harassment and discrimination have to have consequences.
I like that. What about increasing the number of women in charge, behind the scenes, in leadership roles?
That's huge. Right now, the industry is heavily dominated by men, not just in Malayalam Cinema, but pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, it's a global problem.
More women, directors, producers, cinematographers, that would shake things up.
Bring in new voices.
Exactly. And the report suggests some concrete ways to make that happen.
Like what?
Well, one idea is government incentives.
Incentives? How would that work?
Financial support for productions that meet certain diversity criteria.
Oh, interesting. So maybe tax breaks or funding boosts for productions with more women in key roles?
Exactly. Level the playing field a bit.
I like that idea. Now, for our listeners out there, why should we care about what's going on in the Malayalam film industry?
Because this goes beyond just movies. This is about basic human rights.
The right to work without fear of harassment.
Yeah. And these issues aren't unique to India.
We see these power dynamics everywhere, the same culture of silence and compromise.
Hollywood, Bollywood, you name it. This report is a wake-up call.
It's a reminder to be informed, to question our own biases.
And to challenge these abuses wherever we see them.
It's about using our voices and making a difference. There was one line in the report that really stuck with me. One of the committee members, KB Valsala Kumari, said she wanted filmmaking to be so safe that parents could send their kids to work in the industry. With the same confidence as sending them to college or some big engineering firm.
Wow.
That really puts it into perspective.
It does.
Yeah.
We're not just talking about abstract ideas here. We're talking about people's lives.
Yeah. Everyone deserves to feel safe following their dreams. And that brings me to the whole gender sensitivity training thing. Can you really train an entire industry? How would that even work?
Well, the report actually has some practical ideas.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they suggest offering the training online.
Makes sense.
That way everyone can access it, from big stars to crew members just starting out.
It could be like those mandatory safety trainings they have in other industries.
Exactly.
Setting a clear standard, letting people know what's acceptable and what's not.
Right. Zero tolerance for harassment and discrimination.
The report also emphasized the need for more women in charge, like in leadership roles.
Absolutely, that's key.
Yeah.
The industry is so male-dominated, not just in Malayalam cinema, but everywhere.
It's a global issue.
More women directors, producers, writers, that would change things.
Bring in those fresh perspectives. How do we make that happen, though?
The report has some suggestions. One is financial incentives from the government.
Like what kind of incentives?
Money? Supporting productions that prioritize diversity?
So funding for films with more women in charge.
Exactly. Help level the playing field. Now, for everyone listening, you might be wondering why this matters to you.
Especially if you don't even live in India.
This is about more than just movies. It's about human rights.
Everyone should have the chance to work and pursue their passions without fear.
Right. And unfortunately, these problems aren't limited to one place.
We see these power dynamics, this culture of silence, in Hollywood, Bollywood, everywhere.
This report is a reminder that we all have a role to play.
We have to speak up, challenge our own biases, and demand better.
And if you're interested in learning more, I highly recommend checking out the full Hema Committee Report online.
It's a really powerful read.
It really gets you thinking about the responsibility we all have to create a more just and equitable world.
Change is possible, but it takes all of us.
We need to hold those in power accountable.
So the next time you watch a film, think about the people behind the scenes, the stories we don't always hear, and the power dynamics at play.
Use that knowledge to fuel your own activism.
Demand change, not just in the film industry, but in all aspects of life. Well, that's about all the time we have for today.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone.